All right, today we're tackling a big one. We're going to talk about the conflict that really, truly dragged the world into the modern age of warfare and basically set the table for the entire 20th century. I'm talking, of course, about the First World War. It's a mind-boggling story of how just one gunshot in a place most people had never heard of ended up killing millions and completely redrawing the map of the world. So, let's dive in.
You know, it's kind of hard to imagine now, but when the war first kicked off in the summer of 1914, a lot of people were, well, they were excited. There was this weirdly romantic feeling about it. They called it the Great War, like it was some noble adventure, a chance for empires to clash and prove their national spirit.
And the promises? Oh, the promises. Leaders everywhere were telling their soldiers, with total confidence, "Don't you worry, you'll be home by Christmas." Everyone just assumed that modern war, with its new technology, would be so fast, so decisive, there was just no way it could last more than a few months. Boy, were they wrong.
But of course, that first Christmas came and went. And then another one, and another, and another. This war, this thing that was supposed to be wrapped up in a few months, it just kept going. For 1,560 brutal days.
And by the time the dust finally settled, more than 9 million soldiers were dead. Entire empires had just vanished. That hopeful, optimistic world of 1914? Gone. Wiped off the map for good. This wasn't the Great War. It was the seminal catastrophe of the century. So you have to ask, right, how did this happen? How did a world so sure of a short, glorious fight get dragged into a 4-year-long nightmare? How does one assassination in a corner of Europe set the entire planet on fire? Well, it all starts with a continent that was basically a tinderbox, just waiting for a spark. Okay, so picture Europe in the early 1900s. It's not one happy family. It's more like a neighborhood split into two rival gangs. On one side, you've got the Triple Entente. That's France, Britain, and Russia. They're all kind of side-eyeing Germany. Then on the other side, you have the Triple Alliance. Germany, the old-school Austro-Hungarian Empire, and a pretty hesitant Italy. And let's be clear, these alliances weren't about keeping the peace. They were basically, I've got your back if things go south pacts, built on paranoia. It basically guaranteed that if one person threw a punch, everyone was going to jump in.
And that spark, it came on June 28, 1914, in a city called Sarajevo. The heir to the whole Austro-Hungarian Empire, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, is assassinated. He's shot dead by a Serbian nationalist. For Austria-Hungary, this wasn't just a tragedy. It was an excuse. An opportunity to finally deal with their annoying neighbor, Serbia, once and for all.
And what happened next was like watching a line of dominoes fall over, just perfectly. It's the ultimate example of how those alliances were a disaster waiting to happen. So boom, first domino. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Then, Russia, which sees itself as big brother to Serbia, starts getting its army ready. Germany, who's buddies with Austria-Hungary, sees Russia mobilizing and completely freaks out, so they declare war on Russia. Then, Germany knows France is with Russia, so they don't even wait. They declare war on France, too, and start marching through neutral Belgium to get there. And that was the last straw. Invading Belgium brought Great Britain into the fight. And just like that, in a little over a month, all the major powers of Europe were at war with each other. It was that fast.
So Germany's plan was all about speed, a lightning strike, a quick victory. But that's not at all what they got. The war that was supposed to be a race turned into a brutal, bloody crawl.
The whole German strategy was called the Schlieffen Plan, and man, it was a huge gamble. The idea was to swing through Belgium like a giant door, smash France and take Paris in just a few weeks, and then turn around to deal with Russia. But they made a huge mistake. They didn't count on the Belgians putting up such a fight. That delay gave the French and British just enough time to scramble and meet them at the Battle of the Marne. They managed to stop the German army just outside of Paris, and right there, the dream of a quick war just died. So what do you do when nobody can move forward? You dig, and that's exactly what they did. An unbelievable line of trenches was dug all the way from the border of Switzerland to the North Sea. Life in those trenches, it was a complete nightmare. We're talking mud, giant rats, constant shelling, and the ever-present fear of having to go over the top into the hellscape known as no man's land.
And here's the crazy irony. All this new technology, all these amazing modern weapons that were supposed to make the war fast, they did the exact opposite. They made defense so powerful that attacking was basically suicide. You had machine guns that could mow down hundreds of men in seconds, artillery that could vaporize you from miles away, And then there were endless fields of barbed wire. Trying to cross that was a death sentence. And if that wasn't bad enough, they later introduced poison gas, which is just a whole new level of horror.
If you want to understand the human cost of this, just listen to this one number: 57,000. That's how many casualties the British Army took on the very first day of the Battle of the Somme. Not the whole battle, one single day. To this day, it's the bloodiest day in the history of the British military. Just unbelievable.
So while the Western Front was stuck in this meat grinder, the war itself was starting to go global. It was no longer just a European problem. It was pulling in countries from all over the world.
Out on the seas, Britain used its massive navy to set up a blockade, basically trying to starve Germany out. But Germany had a new trick up its sleeve: the U-boat, the submarine. They declared a shoot-on-sight policy in the waters around Britain, meaning they would sink any ship, military or not, that was trying to bring supplies to their enemy.
And this led to a huge moment in May 1915. A German U-boat sank the Lusitania, which was a passenger ship. Almost 1,200 people drowned, and 128 of them were Americans. Now, Germany claimed the ship was secretly carrying weapons, but it didn't matter. The attack caused absolute outrage back in the United States and really started to turn the American public against Germany.
And the war kept getting bigger. The Ottoman Empire, often called the sick man of Europe, decided to join up with Germany. And just like that, new battlefronts exploded all over the place. Suddenly you had fighting in the Middle East, at places like Gallipoli and Mesopotamia. You had the Russians fighting the Turks in the Caucasus Mountains. Even the colonies in Africa and Asia became battlegrounds. Now, there was no doubt about it. This was a true world war.
So for years, it's just this brutal back and forth, a horrific tug of war with no end in sight. But then came 1917. And in that one year, two gigantic events happened on opposite sides of the planet that would change everything and finally break the stalemate.
Okay, event number 1, Russia collapses. After taking just catastrophic losses and facing starvation at home, the country explodes into revolution. The Tsar is out, and the new communist government wants out of the war, period. They sign a treaty with Germany and just leave. So, a huge player is off the board for the Allies. But, as one power exits, another enters. Germany makes the fatal mistake of restarting its unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking American ships. And then, this is like something out of a spy movie. The British intercept a secret message, the Zimmermann telegram, where Germany is trying to get Mexico to attack the United States. That was it. That was the final straw. In April 1917, the U.S. declared war on Germany.
For Germany, the clock was now ticking, loudly. They knew they had a very small window to win this thing. So they took all those soldiers who had been fighting Russia and threw them into one last massive do-or-die attack in the spring of 1918. The plan was simple if desperate: break the Allied lines and win the war before the Americans could show up in full force.
And you know what? It almost worked. The German offensive came terrifyingly close to succeeding, but they couldn't land the knockout punch. The Allied lines bent, but they didn't break. And then, the payback. With a flood of fresh American soldiers, the doughboys, filling the ranks, the Allies launched a huge counteroffensive. It's called the 100 Days Offensive, and it was just relentless. Using everything they had, tanks, planes, infantry, all working together, they shattered the German lines. The German army, just completely worn out after 4 years of hell, finally started to crumble.
And then it was over. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, the guns on the Western Front finally stopped. The Great War was finished. But the peace they were about to build, well, that would turn out to be just as problematic as the war itself.
So everyone gets together in Paris to hammer out a peace treaty, but really, the winners, France, Britain, and the US, called all the shots. And the Treaty of Versailles that they came up with, it was all about punishing Germany. They made Germany sign a war guilt clause, basically saying this was all your fault. They slapped them with massive repair bills, called reparations, that would cripple their economy for decades. They took away all their colonies, and they basically dismantled their military. The goal was to make sure Germany could never do this again, but what it really did was create a deep, bitter resentment that would fester for years to come. So there you have it. World War I is done. 4 massive empires, the Austro-Hungarian, Russian, Ottoman, and German, are just gone. New countries pop up on the map. America is now a major world player, but the peace was fragile, built on anger and revenge. The way they punished Germany, the way they carved up the world, it just planted the seeds for the next fight. Which leaves us with a really chilling question. Was the war to end all wars,
Really just a 20-year ceasefire before something even worse?